And so in this spot, he raises my blind. Obviously, there's a slight chance he might be a tiny bit tilty there, but this is an absolute dog shit hand that happens to be suited. Like we can hit a flush. What do you do in this spot? Because we can win his bounty.
Yeah, from a theoretical point of view, we can do two things. The only thing we can't do is fold.
You'd be surprised.
we're getting 2.5 to 1 on the call. We're in position. We have a hand which defines itself pretty well on the flop, so folding isn't an option. We can definitely call profitably. We can also think about raising, because if we raise and he piles, so we don't lose too much, having to fold. Given he might be a little bit tilty factor, I think I'd prefer calling, because I don't want to give him the chance to pile. Also, I think if he is a little bit tilty, he might be playing a little bit more over aggressively post flop, which is fine for us because we have a hand that can flop a draw. So we would like him to stack off if we hit, basically.
Right. Yeah, it just was slightly too weak a holding for my.
Oh, this is like 8-2 off. You can almost make a case for calling actually here. Like this is the biggest mistake people are making right now, even in normal tournaments, overfolding in those spots. And I think, I won't say the name of the person because I don't want to out him, but one of the AIs said recently that as a pure exploit, you can raise from the small blind 100% because people overfold. And I think he's right.
Right. Okay. Well,
this is a spot where you could now raise to 3.5x, and he's going to overfold. And if he 3-bet hand is so junky, like when you think about it, the last hand he raised from a half big blind to 3 big blinds, so he put in 2.5 big blinds. So if you fold more than half the time, he's immediately making a profit on that, even if he never wins post flop.
Yeah.
And he's obviously going to win post flop sometimes. So, and I think people do fold more than 50%, or at least close to 50%. Because actually, like 8-2 suited, there's a lot of worse hands than 8-2 suited. There's all the unsuited, the suited combos. Unsuited combos. So yeah, I think you could raise here. I don't really like limping. I mean, limping can't be too bad either. I mean, we're putting in half a big blind into 2.7, so we only need to win less than 20% of the time. Yeah, I think limping used to be my standard in these spots, but with this type of hand, which won't flop nutty very often, I still think limping is probably best, but with other hands, I'd be more tempted to raise.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty certain I folded on the. Oh no, I limped. Oh, go me.
Yeah, limping is okay. Yeah, limp fold is fine. Yeah, again, you don't use a HUD, I do. So I'd be looking at stuff like how often people fold in those spots to see whether I'm going to raise or not.
So in terms of the way that I played, like two things that strike me that I definitely think I could improve in. It seems like blind v blind is something that I have a few leaks with.
I think that's a general thing, not necessarily just specifically related to PKO. I think people do overfold in those spots because they have like a shit hand like 8-2 suited, but they forget just how wide the ranges are, and actually that hand plays fine after the flop in a very wide range situation. But in PKOs in particular, we're more incentivized to play those spots.
I think I'm actually quite bad post flop against wide ranges. Actually, I'd say that's.
I mean, they're very difficult, and yeah, it's quite difficult to play because it's very easy to end up overfolding in those spots, because if you don't flop anything, and with a hand like 8-2, like you'll often, when you flop a pair, it'll often be second or third pair. But like in a wide range situation, that's fine. Any pair is pretty huge, but a lot of people don't realize that they'll defend with a hand like 8-2, and the flop will come down King 10-2, and they're not sure whether they're supposed to call a bet or not. Like it's a slam dunk call because you have a pair, but it's trickier to navigate. the reason why hands like 8-2 suited make very good calls in wide range situations too is that you can play your draws more aggressively because people will be stabbing with a wider range. They won't have that many strong hands. So when you flop a flush draw and he bets, you can just raise, and he's going to have to fold so much. So you get to play those types of hands more aggressively. Like even on a King 10-2 board, when he bets, you can raise. Because most of the time he doesn't have a pair, and it's very good for us when we have bottom pair specifically to clean up the equity and protect our hand. But yeah, it's tricky because like I often coach people on how to get better at playing blind on blind, but it's more than just telling them what hands they should be defending. They also have to know how to play post flop, and that's kind of the really tricky part.
I mean, it's kind of like it's probably the single best spot to study as well because it's the one that's guaranteed to come up every.
Absolutely, yeah, no, 100%. If you can become a good blind on blind player, you'll make so much money in tournaments because the spots just come up so much. And when I analyze leaks of players, it's usually the blind and button situation seats that they have the biggest leaks in. Like most people know how to play from early position. And there's just so much money. Like the difference between a good blind player and a bad blind player in terms of expectations is absolutely massive. So getting really good in those spots is super important. And then it also helps you later on into tournaments because, to win a tournament, you're going to have to play four-handed, three-handed, and heads up.
Yeah.
And by the time you get heads up, everything is a blind v blind spot. So having mastered that in the normal game really stands to you when most of the money's been decided.